Chapter 214 The Lord's Table on the Mountain. Thereupon Joseph became afraid. So he quickly called his 4 oldest sons and said to them, "Go and help me look for the little child and for James, for I have sinned against the child and am greatly afraid in my heart." And the 4 sons hurriedly went out in all directions and sought the little child for an hour, but they found him nowhere and came home empty-handed. When Joseph saw that the 4 sons came home alone, his heart was full of anguish, and he went outside and walked quite a distance from the villa, where he wept very bitterly over his supposed transgression against the child. While he was thus weeping, he heard a voice which said to him, "Joseph, you just man, weep not, and do not let yourself be disturbed in your heart by the children of men. For I, whom you now seek fearfully and in disquiet of soul, am closer to you than you think. Just go forward now in the direction in which you are facing, and your eyes will see him who now speaks to you and whom you seek." At these wondrous words, Joseph arose, comforted, and hurriedly went forward through the fields for about a half-hour's walk in the direction he faced. And as he thus walked, he came to a hill of considerable size, which was 170 fathoms high. There he thought and said to himself, "Shall I also climb this hill in this great heat?" And the voice said again, "Yes, you must also climb this hill, for only at the summit shall your eyes behold the Lord, whom you did not see as he sat with you at the table." When Joseph heard this, he paid no attention to the great heat and hurriedly went up the hill. But as he neared the top, he found it wrapped in a dense mist, and was greatly surprised that such a little hill had a mist at this time of the year, for it was the time around Easter. And as he was thus wondering, lo, James and the little child appeared out of the mists, and the little child said, "Joseph, do not hold back and joyfully come with me to the summit of this hill, and there convince yourself that now is not the time in which the Lord shall fast, and that because he did not pray. A time will indeed come in which the Lord will fast, but that is still to come, and so follow me." At this, Joseph followed the little child and soon came to the top. When he arrived at the top, the mists departed, and upon a finely polished crossbeam of cedar wood he saw a roasted lamb, a goblet full of precious wine, and a loaf of the finest wheat bread. At this Joseph was greatly surprised and inquired, "But from where did you take all this? Did the angels bring you that, or did you, O Lord, create it all?" And the little child looked toward the sun and said, "Joseph, look, this luminary of the earth also boards at my table. And I tell you, she requires more sustenance in 1 hour than this earth, which carries you, amounts to. and behold, she has never suffered from hunger or thirst. And such boarders I have in countless numbers, and of incomparably greater size. Do you really suppose that I shall fast when you order me away from the table, if I do not wish to worship myself at an appropriate time? Oh, see, of that the Lord has no need. Now come to my table and dine with me, but this time without your habitual prayer. For love to me is the true prayer. If you have this, then you can at all times save your lips the trouble. And Joseph went over and ate and drank at the true table of the Lord, and found the food to have a truly heavenly flavour. Chapter 215. In hoc signo vinces. After this heavenly meal, on top of the little mountain, Joseph said to the little child, "My Lord and my God, I, a poor old man, beseech you, forgive me if I have no doubt offended you, and come back into the house again with me. For without you, I can never go back, and if I do go back without you, everyone will turn against me quite bitterly and will punish me with hard words." Here the little child answered, "Yes, yes, I will of course go back with you, for here I shall not set up a place and remain. But one thing I require of you, and that is, that you take this my table upon your shoulders and carry it homeward ahead of me. And do not shrink from its burden, for while it will indeed press on you a bit, it will not bend you nor weaken you in the least." At these words, Joseph took the beautiful cross while James took the leftovers from the meal, and thus they started on the way back, with the little child in the middle. After a while, Joseph said to the little child, "Listen, my dearly beloved Jesus. The cross is heavy after all. Can we not rest a bit?" And the little child answered, "You have already carried greater burdens as a carpenter, which I did not lay upon you, and behold, there you would not grant yourself a rest until you carried your burden to its destination. Now you are carrying only a little burden for me for the first time, and already want to rest after 1,000 steps? O Joseph, carry my light burden without a rest, and you will find a fitting reward in my kingdom. See, through this cross you will become aware of my burden, and it will tell you by its small weight what I am to you in the world. And when you will leave this world in my arms, then this cross will become a fiery wagon of Elias to you, in which you will ascend before me in greatest joy." After these words, the aged Joseph kissed the fairly heavy cross and carried it onward without a rest. And it did not seem nearly as heavy to him any more, so that he brought it all the way to the villa quite easily. In the meantime, everyone in the villa was in a state of highest expectancy and filled with greatest concern, wondering from which direction Joseph might return with the little child and with James. And when Mary, Cyrenius, and the others finally caught sight of the approaching three, they lost all restraint. Everyone ran toward them with open arms, and Mary at once seized the little child and pressed him to her heart with convulsive love. But Cyrenius was surprised that Joseph would carry a gallows as the symbol of the greatest degradation and shame home on his shoulders. And the little child upon the mother's arms sat up and said to Cyrenius, "Truly, truly, this symbol of the greatest degradation will become a symbol of the highest honour. If you are not going to carry it after me in this manner, as Joseph now carries it, you will not enter into my kingdom in the future." These words brought Cyrenius to silence, and he asked no more about Joseph's burden. Chapter 216. The Way of the Lord with the Pagans. And they all went back into the house, where they took place at the table according to the will of the little child. For not one of the leading guests had eaten a bite, and the 3 large fish still lay there almost untouched. And since several hours had passed while the little child was being sought, and evening was approaching, the fish naturally became cold, in which state the Jews were usually not permitted to eat them. But as the sun had not set, it was still permissible to eat the fish, only it was required that they be reheated and thoroughly warmed up. Therefore, Joseph immediately called his 4 cooks and ordered them to reheat the fish. Here the little child said, "Joseph, that is not necessary. For from now on, the fish may also be eaten cold, if only they have been fried before that. So instead of frying them again, have lemons and fresh oil brought, and the fish will taste better that way than if they were refried." Joseph promptly followed the advice of the little child and had a whole basket of lemons and a large container of fresh oil brought. At this, all the guests became desirous for this new fare, wondering just how it would taste. Cyrenius was the first who took a sizable piece of fish for himself and put oil and the juice of a lemon on it, and as he began to eat, he could not give enough praise to the wonderful flavour of the thus prepared fish. At this experience of the governor, the other guests also helped themselves, and they all found this fare to have such excellent taste that they also could not find sufficient words of praise. When Joseph had made a test of a sizable portion of fish himself, he asserted, "Truly, if Moses had ever partaken of a thus prepared fish, he surely would have put this food on his fare also. But he just must not have been as well informed as concerns the art of cooking than you, my dearest Jesus." Here, the little child smiled cordially and said in a very friendly way, "My dear Father Joseph, the reason lies in this. With Moses in the desert, the rule was, hunger is the best cook. And the people would often have eaten raw meat out of hunger and met their death. Therefore Moses had to prescribe his fare, and the foods had to be eaten fresh and warm. But now the rule is, and will always continue to be, the Lord is the best cook. And there, one can also enjoy a cold fish with lemon and oil. And that is because the cold but still well-fried fish represents the state of the pagans. The lemon juice represents my power, which harmonizes and pulls them together. And the oil represents my word to them. Now, do you understand why the fish tastes better this way? All were deeply affected at this, and were greatly surprised at the wisdom of the little child. Chapter 217. A Lesson in Geometry. When all had stilled their hunger with the cold fish, they arose, thanked Joseph for this good meal, and then went out into the open, for the sun was still above the horizon. When most of the guests from Cyrenius's company had gone outside, the little child asked him, "Cyrenius, do you not recall what you asked me out there at the scene of the fire, when I praised the fish of the Mediterranean for their quality and fine taste?" Here Cyrenius considered a bit, but could not remember his question. He therefore said to the little child, "O my lord, my life, forgive me. I must confess before you that I have completely forgotten it." Here the little child smiled again, and full of gentleness, reminded the somewhat embarrassed Cyrenius, "Did you not ask me whether the Mediterranean is in the middle of the land? I then referred you to the small earth globe, at which you were to look and decide for yourself whether this sea is really in the middle of the land. See, now would surely be the best time to settle this matter. So take the little earth in your hands and find the answer to your question." And Cyrenius replied, "Yes, by my poor soul. This I surely would have completely forgotten if you, O Lord, had not reminded me of it now." Here James at once sprang into the side chamber and brought the little earth to Cyrenius, who then promptly sought and soon found the Mediterranean. And as he pointed to the Mediterranean with his finger, the little child asked him, "Cyrenius, is that really the middle of the land? Or how does the matter seem to you?" Cyrenius answered, "I dare say that I am good at figures according to Euclid and Ptolemy, and therefore know from the geometry of spheres that on the surface of a ball every given point is in the middle of the surface because, in the first place, each point is precisely the same distance from the centre of the ball, and secondly, because all lines going out from it to its corresponding point on the opposite side of the ball are of the same curvature and length. According to this basic axiom, it follows that this sea can be named the Mediterranean. But on the other hand, I also find that every sea is in the same category and can be a sea in the middle just as well." And the little child rejoined, "Therein you are quite right. But, for all that, the principles of Euclid still do not apply here. And this sea can still be called a sea in the middle exclusively. For wherever the Lord is, there also is the true middle. And behold, the Lord is now here by this sea, and therefore the middle of the sea is also here. That is a different computation of which Euclid did not dream, and it is more correct than his. This explanation greatly alerted Cyrenius, and he continued to study the globe. Chapter 218. Faith demonstrates true humility of the spirit. Thereupon, the little child said to Cyrenius, as the latter began to investigate other matters on the little globe, "Cyrenius, you continue to search in vain and promptly want the whole hand where I have shown you one finger. See, that is out of the question, for everything requires its time and its established, immutable order. When you see a tree blossom, you would of course already like to have the ripe fruit, but that cannot be, for every tree has its time and its order. Now time and order are established by me from eternity, so I cannot go against myself. Neither can anything be taken away from time and from order. I do indeed love you in all fullness of my divine power, but for all that, I still cannot grant you even a minute of fleeting time, for this must flow onward like an incessant stream, and has no rest until it has reached the great shore of eternity, which is ever constant and unchangeable. Thus your continued probing into my mysteries is rather vain. For by such an approach, you still will not come a hair's breadth closer to my depths until the proper time. Cease therefore from such inquiries, and do not burden your spirit in vain. For at the proper time, all that shall freely be yours from me. Now you would like to fully comprehend why the middle is there where I am? But I say to you, such you cannot grasp at present. Therefore, you should first believe, and by faith demonstrate the true humility of your spirit. Once your spirit, by means of humility, has reached the proper depth in itself, then you will also have a clear insight into my depths from this depth. But when you exalt your spirit by searching my depths, then it will leave its living depth ever more and more, and thereby you will alienate yourself from my depths and not come near to them again. Yes, I will add, from now on all deep wisdom shall remain hidden from the wise of the world, but it shall be laid into the hearts of those without guile, the weak children and the orphans. For that reason, become a child in your heart, and then will be the right time for you to receive true wisdom. Cyrenius was greatly amazed at this doctrine, and asked the little child, saying, "Well, if so, then no one may learn to read the letters nor write the script. For if you freely give all that to him who is worthy, why then the laborious learning?" And the little child answered, "By means of proper and humble learning, the acre is made fertile for wisdom, and that is also in my order. But you must not look upon the act of learning as the end or as wisdom itself, but only as a means. For when the acre is made fertile, I shall surely spread the seed from which the proper wisdom will sprout forth. Do you understand that?" At this, Cyrenius was silent and probed no more. Chapter 219. The Cross as Symbol of God's Love. After this most enlightening discussion between the little child and Cyrenius, Joseph also turned to the little child and asked him what was to be done now with the cross that had been brought home. And the little child replied, "Joseph, I tell you, that has already found its man and its place. Now you say to a merchant, 'You have a good product which you will not have for long, for some buyer who is undoubtedly anxious to buy it will soon appear.' And behold, I am also that kind of a merchant. I have brought a good product to be sold to whoever will buy it. And a buyer has already appeared and has brought it into his possession through his love to me. And that buyer is Jonathan, the strong fisherman. Should he then not receive anything for his many fish, with which he so often has generously supplied us in the past? One hand washes the other. Whoever gives water, to him water shall be given in return. Whoever gives oil, he shall be repaid in oil. Whoever gives comfort, to him comfort shall be given eternally. And whoever gives love, he shall also be repaid with love. Now Jonathan has given me all his love. Therefore I also gave him my love in this cross. You others have, to be sure, also given me love with water and oil. But I tell you, Joseph, pure love is valued more highly by me than that with water and oil. For the cross has now become my greatest love. Therefore, I gave it to Jonathan because of his great love to me. For he alone loves me because of myself, and that is pure love. He loved me without knowing who I am. But you others loved me less, although you knew who I really am. And behold, that was a love with a great deal of water. For that reason, you shall never suffer a lack of water in this world, namely in your eyes. Cyrenius loved me with oil, so he shall in days to come also be anointed with the oil of life, as you shall be given to drink of the water of life. But in the future, only those who really love me shall fully dwell with me. This discourse of the little child made Joseph thoroughly afraid, and Cyrenius himself made big eyes. Thereupon the little child added, "But on that account you others should not suppose that I shall withhold the cross from you. For whoever has a heart free from the world shall also receive the free cross." This enlightenment put Joseph and Cyrenius at ease again in their hearts. Chapter 220. The flesh is under the debt of sin. During this discourse of the little child, Jonathan, impelled by his ardent feeling of love, fell down in front of the little child and wept in his extreme joy and gratitude. And the little child said to the others, "Do you see how mighty Jonathan's love to me is? Truly, I tell you, from every tear which now quells from his eyes, a world shall come into being for him in my kingdom. I have in fact already shown you the value and the difference between tears, but here I tell you once more. No tear is valued more highly by me than that which is like the tear of Jonathan. At these words of the little child, the huge Jonathan took hold of himself and declared, "O you almighty Lord of my life, how can I, a great sinner, really be worthy of such infinitely great compassion and grace from you?" And the little child affirmed, "Jonathan, ask yourself how you can possibly love me so mightily in your heart when you are such a great sinner. Is love toward me not holy in itself, as I am holy in my divine being? How then can you, as so great a sinner, be capable of enduring such holy love in your heart? Does not every man become sanctified and wholly newborn by means of love towards God in his heart? Now if you are filled with this love, say, what accordingly is in you that you call sin? See, every man's flesh is in fact a sin in itself. Therefore, every man's flesh must also die. Yes, I say to you, even this flesh of my body is under the debt of sin, and therefore will have to die just like yours. But this sin is after all not voluntary, but only one under judgment, and is no debt whatever for your free spirit. For that reason your worth is determined not according to your flesh, but entirely according to your love, which is free. And it will not be said in the world of the Spirit, "How was your body?" but, "How was your love?" Behold, if you throw a stone into the air, it does not remain in the air, but soon falls back to the earth again. Why so? Because it is attracted by the matter of the earth, as a love under judgment, which wholly constitutes the stone itself. Why then do not the clouds and the stars fall from heaven? Because they are attracted by the love of heaven. Consequently, if your heart is full of love toward God, the eternally living, where indeed will this love draw you, since it alone is free and alive in itself? This last question filled all those present with the greatest bliss, and they all knew where they stood.